The Palms Casino Resort opened in November 2001 on Flamingo Road in Las Vegas, 1 block west of the Las Vegas Strip. It was not a strip casino. That distinction was intentional, deliberate, and commercially brilliant for approximately a decade. The Maloof family, who developed and owned the Palms, had identified a specific gap in the Las Vegas hospitality market. A hotel and casino designed not for the tourists visiting Las Vegas for the first time, but for the young, affluent, culturally connected consumer who wanted the Las Vegas experience without the scale, the crowds, and the transactional atmosphere of the Strip mega resorts. The Palms became the hotel where celebrities stayed, where record labels held listening parties, where the real world filmed the season, where the most photographed suites in Las Vegas were not at the Bellagio or the Wynn, but at a boutique casino 1 block off the Strip, whose pool parties were covered by entertainment media as cultural events rather than as hospitality marketing. The celebrity positioning was not marketing, it was the product. In 2016, Station Casinos acquired the Palms for approximately $312 million. In 2019, Station Casinos reopened the Palms following a renovation that had cost approximately $690 million, more than twice the acquisition price. In 2021, Station Casinos wrote down the value of the Palms by approximately $690 million, the $690 million renovation, the $690 million write-down. The symmetry is not coincidental. It is the forensic finding. The forensic entry point for this case is the relationship between brand identity and capital investment, because the Palms documents the proposition that a hospitality asset whose competitive advantage is rooted in cultural cachet rather than in physical amenity cannot recover that advantage through physical investment alone, and that the attempt to do so produces the specific financial outcome that the write-down confirmed. If this is your first case file from this channel, subscribe now, because every episode adds one more layer to what you are about to understand about the architecture of institutional failure. Station Casinos' acquisition of the Palms in 2016 was a thesis about brand repositioning applied to a distressed asset. The Palms had been sold by the Maloof family under financial pressure in 2011, when the combination of the 2008 recession's impact on Las Vegas discretionary spending and the Maloof's financial difficulties across their broader portfolio had made continued ownership of the property untenable. The buyer in 2011 was Leonard Green and Partners, a private equity firm whose acquisition thesis treated the Palms as a real estate asset with upside potential rather than as a cultural brand requiring active curation. The private equity ownership period produced the specific deterioration that Station Casinos then acquired. A property whose physical plant had not been maintained at the standard required to support the premium positioning the Palms brand implied, whose celebrity relationships had atrophied without the active cultivation that the Maloof family had provided, and whose market positioning had drifted from the specifically targeted young, affluent demographic that had made the property a cultural phenomenon to a more generic mid-market Las Vegas visitor profile. Station Casinos acquired a property with a famous name and a diminished brand in 2016. The covenant that Station Casinos did not read carefully enough was the one written into the nature of the Palms brand itself. The Palms had not been a premium hotel that celebrities chose because it was well appointed, though it was. It had been a cultural destination that celebrities chose because other celebrities were choosing it, because the Maloof family's entertainment industry relationships had seeded the property with the specific social proof that created the self-reinforcing celebrity ecosystem that defined the brand. That ecosystem had been built over a decade through personal relationships, cultural connections, and the specific atmosphere that the Maloofs had curated. It could not be rebuilt through renovation. A $690 million renovation could produce a better appointed hotel. It could not produce the cultural credibility that had made the Palms the most photographed casino in Las Vegas at a fraction of the capital investment that the Strip mega resorts required. At what point does a capital investment thesis mistake the product of a brand for the brand itself? Leave your analysis in the comments below. The appraisal methodology that governed Station Casino's $690 million renovation investment treated the Palms as a physical product whose competitive position could be restored through capital expenditure applied at sufficient scale. That methodology was appropriate for the category of hotel asset, where competitive position is primarily a function of physical quality. The age of the guest rooms, the quality of the food and beverage program, the condition of the pool and spa facilities, and the overall physical standard relative to the competitive set. The Palms was not that category of asset. The Palms' competitive position at its peak had been primarily a function of social proof. The visible presence of celebrities, entertainers, and cultural figures who chose the property because other celebrities, entertainers, and cultural figures were choosing it, in a self-reinforcing cycle that the Maloof family had initiated through personal relationships and sustained through active curation. Physical quality was a necessary condition of that positioning. It was not a sufficient condition. The appraisal failure was the treatment of physical quality as sufficient. The assumption that a renovated Palms with superior guest rooms, new food and beverage outlets, and updated common areas would recover the social proof positioning that the Maloof-era property had commanded. The renovated Palms opened in 2019 as a genuinely excellent hotel by conventional hospitality standards. It was not the Palms that had defined a decade of Las Vegas cultural geography. The celebrities who had stayed at the Palms in 2005 were staying at other properties in 2019, properties that had been actively cultivating the social proof positioning that the Palms had abandoned during the private equity ownership period and that the renovation had not restored. The $690 million produced a better building. It did not produce the cultural ecosystem that the building's brand implied and that the acquisition thesis required. The write-down confirmed what an independent assessment of the brand's recovery would have identified before the renovation began: that the gap between the physical product the investment could produce and the cultural product the brand required was not closable through capital expenditure. If the forensic analysis this channel conducts is changing how you read real estate headlines, the like button is how the algorithm knows to send this case file to the next analyst who needs it. The $690 million of write-down the Station Casinos recorded in 2021 was the formal accounting acknowledgement of a thesis failure that the property's operating performance had been documenting since the 2019 reopening. The COVID-19 pandemic's disruption of Las Vegas hospitality in 2020 complicated the measurement of the renovation's commercial impact, as every Las Vegas property experienced demand destruction that made performance comparisons to pre-renovation benchmarks analytically unreliable. The write-down was not primarily a pandemic consequence. It was a recognition that the assets carrying value on Station Casinos' balance sheet could not be supported by any realistic projection of the property's future operating cash flows under the competitive conditions that the Las Vegas hospitality market had established. The institutional denial embedded in the renovation thesis was not the denial of the Palms brand's deterioration. Station Casinos had correctly identified that the brand had declined during the private equity ownership period and that the physical plant required significant investment. The denial was the assumption that physical investment was the primary mechanism through which the brand's decline could be reversed, a denial of the specific nature of what the Palms brand had been and what had actually produced its cultural authority. The Maloof family had not built the Palms brand through capital investment. They had built it through relationships, through presence, through the active curation of a social ecosystem that physical infrastructure supported but did not create. Station Casinos was a casino operating company whose competitive advantages were operational efficiency, loyalty program management, and local market knowledge in the Las Vegas gaming market. It was not an entertainment industry relationship network. The tool it was most skilled at deploying, capital investment in physical renovation, was not the tool the problem required. Station Casinos subsequently sold the Palms in September 2021 to the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians for approximately $650 million. The brand is potentially recoverable. The $690 million Station Casinos spent attempting the wrong recovery mechanism is not. The Palms Casino Resort under San Manuel Band of Mission Indians ownership continues to operate at 4320 West Flamingo Road, 1 block west of the Las Vegas Strip, in the position that the Maloof family had identified in 2001 as the optimal location for a hotel designed to serve the culturally connected Las Vegas consumer rather than the tourist seeking the Strip mega resort experience. The physical infrastructure of the $690 million renovation is present and operational. The guest rooms, the food and beverage program, the pool facilities, and the entertainment venues are all at the standard that the investment produced. The cultural ecosystem that the Maloof family had built and that the Station Casino's renovation had attempted to restore through capital investment is the subject of ongoing efforts by the San Manuel ownership to rebuild through the relationship cultivation and entertainment industry engagement that produced it originally. What the Palms case reveals in the context of this channel's 38-case archive is the specific failure category of brand asset misidentification, in which an acquiring operator correctly identifies that a brand has declined and incorrectly identifies the mechanism through which the brand's competitive advantage was originally created, deploying the wrong recovery tool at substantial cost and producing a write-down that documents the gap between the tool deployed and the problem that required solution. Every previous case file in this archive has documented a financial structure that was too large for the cash flows the underlying asset could generate. The Palms documents a capital investment that was correctly sized for the physical renovation the asset required and fundamentally inadequate for the brand recovery. The investment thesis assumed physical renovation would produce. The renovation produced a better hotel. The brand required a different kind of work entirely. The Palms is still there, 1 block off the Strip. The suites are renovated. The pool is operational. The question of whether the cultural cachet that made it famous can be rebuilt is the question that the San Manuel ownership is now attempting to answer. With the benefit of the physical infrastructure that the $690 million produced, and without the constraint of the balance sheet liability that the write-down resolved, if this case file changed how you evaluate the relationship between brand identity and capital investment in hospitality acquisitions, subscribe, because the next case examines what happens when a brand's identity is so specifically tied to a single geographic circumstance that no capital investment of any description could address the structural challenge it faced. And in the comments, given the Palms brand's documented dependence on celebrity social proof rather than physical amenity as its primary competitive driver, what specific pre-acquisition due diligence process would have identified the brand recovery mechanism required and prevented the $690 million capital misallocation that the write-down confirmed? The case file is open. This content was developed using artificial intelligence tools as part of the research, writing, and production process. All AI-generated material was subject to human review, editorial intervention, and approval before publication. Factual claims, interpretive framing, creative direction, and final content decisions reflect human judgment throughout. This disclosure is provided in accordance with platform transparency standards for AI-assisted content.